Happy Friday, everybody.
Happy Friday.
And welcome to the back catalog listening party. My name is Mother Banjo, one of your hosts.
My name is Anthony Ihrig, the other host.
And today we have joining us all the way from across the pond in Ireland, Karan Casey.
Hello, how are you going? Oh.
Folks are excited for the show. We have Linda from Connecticut, Connie from Richfield,
Hey, Connie.
and Alan joining us, I'm guessing from Texas, given that he's calling 60 degrees chilly. But it's a little colder than that here in Minnesota. I don't know what it is currently, Tony, but last time I was outside, it was in the negative zone.
I think we broke zero, so I think we're maybe in the single digits, maybe.
Yes. And Joe joining us from right here in Minneapolis. And Karen, what's the weather like where you are? You are in Cork, is that right?
Yeah, I'm in Cork. It's in the south of Ireland. No, it's pretty warm actually. It's very nice. Yeah. Don't
Good.
need a coat, just a cardigan. Yeah.
Wow. Well, we got slammed. For anyone who is in this neck of the woods knows Minnesota got slammed with another big snowstorm this week. It wasn't as bad as they were predicting, but some of us still digging out of that mess. So we're happy to have an hour to just relax, rest our backs from the shoveling, and enjoy some music with Karen. And yeah, and it looks like Anne's still at school drinking tea. And wherever you are tuned in from today, if you are new to the back catalog listening party, this is the show where we welcome different artists on to revisit old records, and it's meant to be a happy hour, nice way of kicking off your weekend. So no matter what time zone you are in, I know it's late where Karen is. It's a little earlier here, around 4 p.m. Central Time. If you're enjoying a beverage or a snack to kick off your weekend, feel free to throw it in the comments and let us know where you're tuned in from. And Karen, what are you enjoying on your late night Friday?
I'm having a cup of tea, actually.
Awesome.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And Tony, what about you?
Well, I didn't have any Guinness in the house, but
What?
I found the darkest beer I could find. This is the Mud Puppy Porter from Central
Oh.
Waters, a great Wisconsin brewery, but it's hitting the spot.
Excellent. And I am in honor of our guests. I'm having a little whiskey, a little Jameson, to kick off my weekend, and goldfish crackers. So
Right on.
because
Parent snack.
I've decided that it is one of the best salty snacks to go with whiskey. That's what I've determined. So so that's what I'm doing to kick off my weekend. And it looks like we have folks joining in from Urbana, Illinois. And Joe used to live up on the hill
Up
in
in
Cork.
Hill Park. Oh, right.
All
Great.
right.
Where's that? Shrewsbury Terrace. I don't know where that is.
Mm.
Hmm.
We'll have to get out the Google Maps in a little bit and look it up. And then we have Stephanie joining us from Kansas, Matt from Urbana, Illinois. Thank you all for joining us. We're really excited to have Karen joining us on the show. She's been on my bucket list for quite some time of artists we wanted to have on the show. So we're excited, especially because she's been very busy. She's getting ready for a big U.S. tour, which we'll talk more about, and put out a new record this week, which we will also talk more about. But the point of this show is to revisit the old stuff. And Karen picked an album from 2014 that we're going to revisit today. But before we dive in, Karen, for folks who are maybe less familiar with your music, maybe you could give a little brief 2-minute bio, where you grew up, how you fell into making music, and in particular, what led up to the making of this record we're going to talk about today.
Well, I suppose I'm primarily known as a traditional singer. I grew up in Waterford in Ballyduff, Kilmeaden, and was blessed to have had an amazing singing teacher, Mrs. Foran, Winifred Foran, who had 10 children, taught us all how to swim, and kind of took people into her house, and we would transcribe songs, traditional songs. And that's how I started learning traditional songs. But I grew up, my dad is a fantastic singer. My uncles, both of my grannies were great singers. And they used to put me up on a table when I was about 2 or 3 and I would hold on to the curtain rail and I would sing, and they would sit in the middle of the room on a chair clapping. So they were a fantastic audience. It's a dangerous thing to teach a 3 and a 4-year-old. And so I suppose I was surrounded by song really. When we went on trips, we'd sing, and I was in the church choir, and then I began to, I suppose, learn more folk music in my teens, and just kind of step out further into competitions and pub competitions. And then I went to Dublin to college, and I discovered Ella Fitzgerald. I auditioned to sing in Greece, and
Oh, wow.
yeah,
Nice.
I didn't get a part, but I got a part singing in the band. And
Nice.
so I was asked to sing Blue Moon. And I remember the saxophonist, Larkin Fulham, he said to me, "Well, do you know any jazz?" And I said, "No, not really." And he said, "Well, what about Ella Fitzgerald?" And I said, "No." And then he bought me the Cole Porter songbook.
Oh, nice.
Oh, and then my world just changed completely.
I bet.
And so initially I emigrated to America in 93, and it was primarily to become a jazz singer, actually. And then I had 3 or 4 different jobs, and I was trying to be a jazz singer, but I would go to the sessions, the Blarney Star in New York, and I would sing, and then people said, "Well, why don't you come and sing with us?" And those people happened to be Seamus Egan and Winifred Horan, who I didn't know. I didn't know who they were. So I was like, "Okay, Grant, yeah, sure, I'll go with you." And we, one of the first gigs was up in Buffalo, New York. I remember it was like 9 hours in the van. I was like, "Holy Mother of God." But anyway, yeah, and it went from there. Solace took off, and it was a whirlwind. I was very lucky, to fall into the lap of Solace. And it was a lot of, I suppose, learning. We made albums, we got a record deal. We were incredibly lucky. We were kind of on the wave of Riverdance and all things Irish. And then I left Solace and moved home to Ireland, and had my first child, or first daughter, Muireann, and started a solo career, and have been I'm delighted I'm still going, and still loving it and excited about it. And it's been up and down, but I've really I love being a singer, and being able to sing. And this album is very dear to my heart, the 2 More Hours, because I made this really after my mother died in 2010. And so a lot of the songs and everything are about her, and about relationships. And also, I think when your mother dies, you ask yourself what you want in the world. So one of the things I had always wanted was to be writing my own songs and singing them, playing the piano more, and doing that. So this was kind of the first time I did that. Yeah, so I suppose when I think back now, it's nearly 10 years ago. It was a big step. It felt like a huge step at the time. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Hmm.
wonderful.
Hmm.
Well, we are so excited to dig into this record with you this week. And I don't know, friends, what do you think? Is it time for some music?
I think so.
I think so. So this is from Karan Casey's 2014 release, 2 More Hours. The first track you picked, Karen, to talk about on today's show is Home. Is there anything you want to say about it before we take a listen?
Well, I was blessed. I read a lot of poetry, and there's this amazing woman called Paula Meehan. So, just for people to know Paula, she's an incredible poet. She was like our poet laureate. She was the chair of Irish poetry for 3 years, which is the highest honor you can be. And she's just an extraordinary woman. She's done a lot of social activism. She's from the inner city in Dublin, and she works in prisons and does a lot of work with getting people who are deprived of education and wealth to introduce to poetry. She's quite extraordinary, but I just love her poems. I think they're, we've a lot of good poets in Ireland.
Yes, we do.
Cute.
They're great
And
exports of
she's,
Ireland.
yes, yeah. So she's kind of like the high priestess, really, of poetry. So I was reading her poem, and this one is called Home, and it just sort of sang itself off the page. I was like, oh my God, I have to turn this into a song. So
Excellent. Well, let's give it a listen. This is Karan Casey, Home, here on the Back Catalog Listening Party.
I am a blind woman finding my way home by the map of a gym. Well, the song that is in me is a song I hear from the world. It's not written down, I don't remember the words, but I know when I hear it, I'll have made it myself. I'll be home. I'll be home. 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 This morning a letter is arrived on the 9 o'clock post. The Department of Historical Reparation. Ah, who do I blame? The priest, my father, myself, tick the box provided. I'm burning my soapbox and I'm taking the very next train. I'm a citizen of nowhere with nothing to my name. I'm a citizen of nowhere with nothing to my name. And the wise women say you must live in your own skin. Call it home. No matter how broken you are, misused by the world, you can heal. I'm on the last journey, though my lines are all wonky. They spell me a map and it makes sense. Where is the song that is in me? It's the song I hear from the world. I'll set my burdens down and sleep. Spot that I lie on at last is the place that I call home. It's the place that I call home. Home, home, home.
Oh, beautiful.
Nice.
Karan Casey with Home from her 2014 album Two More Hours, which we are revisiting today on the show with Karen joining us all the way from Cork in Ireland, where it is much later than it is here in Minnesota. So we appreciate her joining us today. And that actually has some great kind of late night vibes actually to it.
Mm.
There's
Yeah,
something about
that
the
saxophone was just so
yeah,
smooth.
Yeah, that's
yeah.
Ken. That's Ken Edge. Oh my God, he's like a magician. It's fantastic.
It's so great, and it totally makes sense. It's funny. I've known your music for a long time, uh, but hearing you talk more about wanting to become a jazz singer and all of that stuff, it totally makes sense of why so much of your music has so many different musical styles and sounds and textures to it. But having the saxophone on there, just it's not what I think a lot of folks would expect if they think of like a Karen Casey, an Irish record.
Yeah,
They don't think
yeah,
saxophone usually.
exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But yeah, so when you wrote the song, did you feel like you knew there was going to be a saxophone on it, or is that something that just happened in the studio?
Um, well, so Paul, I wrote the melody, but they're Paula's words. But no, we didn't have any. And my husband Niall Vallely produced the whole album, and he worked a lot with Ken, who also worked a lot with Micheál O'Sullivan, piano player, very well known piano player and academic here in Ireland. Big influence on traditional music. And I had heard Ken with them, and I just really liked. Well, I really liked him, and I really liked how he played, and he's kind of weaves his way in very gently,
Hmm.
and I just loved that about his playing. Yeah,
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 I
and
thought
then
that.
that's
Oh, go ahead.
no, go on, go on.
Well, that was one of the things that stood out to me actually was the kind of musical conversation
Hmm.
Mm,
that you could hear between the piano and saxophone and voice there. It was beautiful.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And so that's Kevin. Kevin Valley's a great piano player. And he's Niall's brother, who I worked with for a long time. Beautiful accompanist. He's like one of the best, really. He's one of my favorite people to play with. And then you also hear Niall is on it as well on the concertina, quite subtly. And of course, the stunning harmony vocals of Aoife O'Donovan.
Yes.
Yeah, so she's like this genius. So no matter what you sing, like I met Aoife when she was very young because I know her parents very well, Brian and Lindsay. And Aoife used to come to my gigs, and she sang support at one of the gigs. This is way back now in like earlier, that like it must have been 2008. Yeah, and I just loved what she did. I was like, oh my God, she's stunning.
Hmm.
So I asked her to. She has this kind of uncanny ability. She's almost telepathic. Even if you change the melody, she manages to go along with you in the harmony. Yeah. So
Did you do that kind of recording remotely with her, or did you have her join you where you were recording?
no, I sent it to her, and she put it down in New York. But it's just her timing. She
Hmm.
really, you know, I don't know how she does it. I'm not a great harmony singer, I should admit to everyone. So I'm mesmerized by people who are really good at harmony. I'm like, oh my God.
Well, it's so interesting you say that because I think a lot of folks assume, oh, if you're a good singer, then you can do all the different singing things. But, it is a different skill set,
Yeah,
being a lead singer versus coming up and also coming up with the harmonies, not just singing them, but like
Yeah.
really just hearing it right away. I mean, that is a really unique skill that not
Feels like
everyone has.
magic. It feels like magic to me when I hear someone just grab a third or whatever, just I don't know how it's done. You know.
yeah. And neither do I, Tony.
I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that. I just jump to the melody every time I've tried to sing harmony. I just end up singing over the top of whoever's singing melody. It's terrible.
Yeah, I'm the same. And I suppose I was a soprano in the choirs, which is, kind of, I won't say it was an easier part. You don't, the altos have to work a bit harder in learning that inner line and the harmonic structure. whereas the sopranos can just, because you kind of hear the higher note before everything else. So
Mhm.
yeah.
As someone who was an alto in choir, I can
Oh,
attest to the fact that it
I
like
didn't knew that.
it did help. I mean, it does help you hearing those other parts. On the other hand, you sometimes get stuck with some really boring parts too, like
Yeah, the
the
one note.
plotting. Yeah,
Da, da,
exactly.
da, da. Yeah, yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
So it's a blessing and a curse,
Yes.
but
So
yeah,
I
but
was just going to
Aoife's
ask. Oh,
vocals.
go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna reiterate how much I love Aoife O'Donovan's singing and
Mm,
her singing on that track in particular.
mm, yeah.
And that made me think about just, like how much direction would you give these players that are on these songs? Obviously, these songs are personal to you, and you're putting together it, kind of piecing it together. Do you just kind of let the musicians create these kind of tapestries, or were you directing it a little bit?
No, I don't. I'm blessed. Like Sean O'Graham is on the guitar there, and I'm blessed by working with all these musicians. I tend to pick musicians who are, who like and have their own identity, and who come up with parts themselves. I mean, I came up with the chords all right, and
Hmm.
so they play those chords. Yeah. But I like people who have that flair, and I don't really like. Um, I don't think I've ever really had. Maybe once or twice I've had to say, no, don't. Would you mind not playing that? I find that very hard, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so no, I didn't really have to do that, even though that did come up more in the string parts of this, which
Hmm.
Niall wrote, but I didn't have to do that. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm. Interesting. Well, and you said that a lot of these songs, you were writing on the piano, and but you chose to have a different piano player. Do you find yourself, being more picky about those parts, or not really?
No, I really trust Keevan's parts, and I thought that, especially that introduction, da 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 da, I think it's really sets the whole thing off. I loved that.
Mhm.
Um, no, I don't. The only time I'd say about a chord is if I couldn't find my melody note.
Mhm.
But in fairness, because I did a lot of jazz, any chord that's thrown at me, I can fairly much go, oh, okay, and find something. Um, but not, yeah, or if the chord completely clashes with something that someone else is playing in the band,
Mhm.
but not, yeah, no, not really. Um, yeah, but you are correct, Ellen, in that I'm very partial to certain piano players. Yes, yeah.
Right, right. So you're picky by picking the right piano player to
Oh,
to do the parts. And
yeah.
well, folks are loving the music, and we're going to dive back into it. I did want to just point out this comment from Penny, though, who just said, "I'm a Dineen by birth, deep roots in Cork. My dad's name was
Oh,
Finbar,
fantastic.
patron saint of
Yes,
Cork." So,
yes. Hi, Penny.
so again, those ties run deep. If you have Irish roots, that's for sure.
Yeah, and we
Um,
appreciate hearing from you. So keep it up. Let us know what you think about the music. Ask your questions for Karen in the comments. We keep it coming, folks. It's so much
Yeah.
fun.
Exactly. And we're going to keep the music coming. And this next track we're going to feature is called Lovely Annie. Is there anything you want to say about this before we take a listen?
Well, this is a song I wrote for my mother. My mother was called Anne, and I wrote this after she died, so it's fairly self-explanatory.
All right, we'll give it a listen. This is Lovely Annie, Karen Casey here on the Back Catalog Listening Party.
I will sing for you a lullaby, a lullaby, a lullaby. I will sing it For you gone, girl, gone, girl, gone, girl, gone from my world, my lovely Annie, my lovely Annie. And all is quiet, there's stillness everywhere, everywhere. And the world keeps on turning, but you're not standing there, standing there. For you gone, girl, gone, girl, gone, girl, gone from my world, my lovely Annie, my lovely Annie. For you gone, girl, gone, girl, gone, girl, gone from my world, my lovely Annie, my lovely Annie. And the moon and the stars, yes, they while away the hours, the hours. And the sun keeps on shining, but you're not standing there, standing there. And if you could just appear for 1 hour in the day, then I tell you just how much I love you so. I love you so. I love you so. This is a lullaby, a lullaby.
Oh, Lovely Annie by Karan Casey from her 2014 release, Two More Hours. And
Beautiful.
what a
Thank you.
beautiful tune. And
Thank
when
you.
you go high in that, and right around, I don't know if it's the chorus or that other part, I don't know, the emotion is just really potent there. Really.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Was your mother musical?
No, she was a self-professed crow. But she sang all the time. Like she'd go, "Come on, we tidy up," or "Come on, we do the dishwashing," or she loved music and listened to the radio all day. Like the radio would be on, and she sang along and love. And I mean, I suppose she must love music. Because my dad sings so much, and yeah, so yeah, she's a big lover of music and very supportive of my music and very supportive of all the way along. Like she drove me to all the lessons and all the pub competitions and everything, all the gigs. Yeah, she was great, and also really helped when my daughters were young. in babysitting and minding. So I definitely wouldn't be where I am without her. Like yeah, she did. Yeah.
And I love that at the end, this is a lullaby, and it's like you are singing the lullaby to your mom, but
Mm,
it's
mm,
like a
Hmm.
role reversal. All your
yeah,
life she was probably, even if she wasn't the singer that some of the other members of your family were, I'm sure she sang to you when you were little. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, definitely.
I was really taken by just the warmth of the production on this. Like everything just feels just like the acoustic qualities of this recording are brilliant. I mean, it's really well produced record, and it really adds to the feeling that you get
Hmm.
when you listen to it. So I'd love to know about the where this was recorded and how, because man, it's really hard sometimes to capture that much kind of warmth, I guess, is for lack of a better term,
Mm.
in a recording, and it just sounds just gorgeous.
Oh, thank you. Well, my husband would be delighted. So it was Niall. He produced it, and it's really in our. We have I say a studio. It's not really a studio. It's like a shed out the back, and um, we set that up in maybe 2009 or 10, and then yeah, it's great because you can go out there and you don't have to go away and sort of agonize about going to the studio.
Or it
So
costs a lot.
he does spend a lot of time. He hangs up duvets and he nails duvets and blankets into the wall, and cushioning it and making, like, I'd stand in different parts of the room, and he's like, that sounds better there, or for a certain song. And yeah, so I'm blessed that way. And also, you can be a bit more relaxed. You don't have to be on form in the studio with the clock running and you're paying a fortune. So if you're having a good day vocally, it's great. It's really has been fantastic to have that. We're very lucky to have it. Yeah.
Wow. So this was this recorded mostly there then, and then did you have
Yeah.
musicians come and play it there, like layer it over time, or is there enough space there for you guys to play together?
Yeah, like, well, there's enough space for Sean Oak, the guitar player, and actually Owen O'Regan was the other guitar player, the electric guitar player. And there was, at the time, we had Keeveen's piano because he couldn't fit his piano into his house. So he put it into the studio. I should call it a studio. I'll be killed for calling it a shed. And
No one
uh,
knows.
yeah.
No one will hear.
We did try and do it uh in like with drums and bass, but that didn't work out. So we went to Dan Fitzgerald's, who's a sound engineer in Cork, and laid down the drums on certain tracks there
Okay.
because we couldn't fit the drum and the piano and the guitar. Yeah, so with a mixture of that. Yeah,
Well, just
yeah.
really beautifully recorded, and I
Thank
think that's
you.
a good segue to
Mm.
mention that you can get the high resolution version
Mhm.
of this record by visiting Karen's website directly, karencasey.com. Put it in the comments too. You can link to it. I mean, you're probably hearing it through YouTube right now, or a podcast player, and it's you're probably missing a few ones and zeros in there. And so I highly recommend that you head on over to her website, pick up the high resolution, either digital or get the CD itself. And then you can get the liner notes and all that kind of fun stuff as well.
Mhm.
Yeah, and then you can really appreciate that Niall really picked just the right number of duvets to hang
Yeah.
up while
Yes.
recording.
Well, and thus I think I heard that it was warm. It felt warm.
Yeah,
Yes, I mean, in fairness to Dan Fitzgerald, who's the engineer, he did a lot of work on that. Yes, yeah.
excellent. Well, yeah, it does sound very beautiful, and folks can pick up the copy of the album. And you mentioned that this album was kind of your first foray into really doing like a whole record of songs that you had written, and really embracing that fact, and that this sort of came as a result of or maybe a symptom of your mother
Yeah.
passing and sort of thinking about how you wanted to lead your life. And I'm wondering, did this sort of change the trajectory for you then for your albums that have come since?
Yeah, it did definitely. Because it was my first time doing all self-composed songs. And some were more successful than others. I think I've picked out the better ones to be talking on now. It's a very different craft.
Hmm.
I'm an interpretive singer mostly, like with traditional song or whatever songs I cover. But so the songwriting, I found I had to grow into it, and it's a completely different craft to singing. Yeah, so I had to allow myself the space to grow into it, and you have to have time. You have to have a lot of time. Um, so I kind of just thought, yeah, why not do what you want, and why not to do, what is life for? I think a lot of people say that after when they're grieving or whatever.
Hmm.
So, and also that's the way my mother would have spoken and said, "Do what you want." She was always very good that way. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, and it's interesting you say that it's a different craft, but also the time factor, because if you're singing I mean, there's always new songs to learn if you're picking a song to perform or record. But there's so many songs that you have the luxury of spending time with, right? Because
Mm.
you've heard them maybe your whole life, or maybe you just discovered it, but you can listen to it on repeat and really have the luxury of kind of figuring out how you want to sing it and interpret that song. But when it's your own song, you spend so much time working on the song itself. Do you ever find that your own songs have really they it takes a little while for them to settle into that really sweet spot in terms of how you sing them?
Yeah, and I think at the start I used to just be so excited and relieved that I had actually written a whole song. I've got better now at throwing them away and going, okay, no, that's not working, because I think at the initial start you tend to kind of cling to what you have and you want it to work, and then you're also creatively on such a buzz from the whole process of writing. It's really, it's a really great thing to be able to do with your days, is write songs. Like, that's what I love. Um so the immediacy of new songs sometimes, it can almost hoodwink you into thinking, oh, this is a great
Right.
song. So I
Right,
think,
just because you
yeah,
love the song,
Yeah.
right,
yeah.
yeah.
And sometimes
So it,
putting it aside for a little bit gives you
yeah,
more perspective.
yeah,
Mhm,
definitely,
mhm.
yeah, yeah.
Well, we got a few questions in here about some other musicians and wondering if you've crossed paths. Joe asking, of course, about one of the Twin Cities
Oh
own
yeah,
Dahi
yeah.
Sproul. I'm guessing you've crossed paths with him
Yes, yes, I
over the
love
years.
Dahi. He's fantastic. Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah. And then Joni was asking, um, she said the amazing voice and vulnerable emotion have threads of reminders of Nancy
yes.
Griffith. And I know she played often in Ireland. Do you ever
Yeah,
cross paths?
yeah, well, I went to see her a lot when I was younger, and I loved her singing. She had a huge influence on a lot of Irish singers. She's just once in a very blue moon.
Hmm.
We learnt all her songs. At those pub competitions, I would have been singing Nancy Griffith songs. So definitely, yes. And I did have the pleasure of meeting her on Mountain Stage.
Hmm.
She was on Mountain Stage, oh God, it was a long time ago, maybe like 2006 or something. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well,
Good
it's
ear,
so
Joni.
yeah, so it's so interesting that you mentioned that you'd be singing like Nancy Griffith songs in these pub competitions, because we don't really have the equivalent quite here in the States in
Mm.
terms of like I mean there's singing competitions, but they definitely don't happen in pubs usually, and at least not for the younger folks. And
Mhm.
so but also like I think like when I first heard that I thought, "Oh, you're probably singing traditional music." But no, it sounds like you're singing just any song? Are these
Yeah, you see, here it's very eclectic.
Mhm,
You go to even a traditional session, and people just sing what they want. They can get up and sing an aria. They can sing Elvis. They can sing a traditional song. At the parties, what I was talking about earlier, my parents, you sang whatever. Mario, Lorenzo. Um, the it's it was more about just having one song or a poem or a dance. It's just more about doing something. So there isn't this kind of tidying up or putting everything into boxes. Yeah, it's more about singing the song and enjoying the song and all being about the song. And yeah, the people just love doing that. I mean, the pub competitions were probably more folky. They were more like Mary Black, Maura O'Connell songs that I would have gravitated towards. But yeah. Now we do have competitions as well, and traditional music, and yeah.
Right, but the kind of the pub competition could be just anything that people wanted to bring to share. That's really wonderful. Well, if folks are enjoying what Karan is sharing today, again, feel free to pick up that album. Also, there's a tip jar as well, which you can check out. But we're going to dive more into music because I want to hear more of this record because I'm really loving these songs. And the next track you picked, Karan, is "Pacing the Dark." Is there anything you want to say about this?
No, maybe we'll play it and then, yeah.
Perfect.
All right. We'll let the music do the talking here. This is Karan Casey, "Pacing the Dark," here on the Back Catalog Listening Party. Nice.
All right. That was Karan Casey with Pacing the Dark. I was so swept up with all that. I was like, what's going to be the next part? Because there are all these
I
sections of
know.
the song.
I heard all
Yeah.
kinds of
Yeah.
genres mingling on that one. That's
Yeah.
great.
Wow, that is
Thank you.
amazing. Amazing song,
Thank
amazing production, and obviously the strings. There's
Yeah.
a lot of strings, both of the sustained strings, like the violins, as well as
Mm-hmm.
plucky stuff. I don't know if that was
Yes.
a
Pizzicato.
banjo or a harp or something going on in there.
So
Yeah.
that's the string. And so my Niall Valley wrote the string parts. There's other string arrangements on the album, a lot of them, and we work with this cello player called Kate Ellis. She's just stunning. She's amazing. I sometimes do gigs just herself and myself. Actually, she's now working with Bono,
Oh.
so I can't get her. I'm like, don't mind Bono. But so yeah, Niall did all those, the pits
Mhm.
part and wrote out those parts. Yeah, and I really, really like that. And that's Ken Rice on the fiddle and viola. Yeah, so it felt like it really lifted the whole song. Yeah, yeah.
Well, yeah, because it didn't just have like the sort of soaring moments, which a lot of folks think of when they think of string arrangements and songs, but
Mm,
but it has a lot of those more like the kind of
gritty kind of.
yeah, the mood building,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
intense like
Yes. Yeah.
vibe to it, which I
And
think
then the
was really
drums
good.
really kick in
Mhm.
too to kind
Uh-huh.
of
Yeah.
lift it up. I felt like that song kind of took us on a journey.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Really,
Thank
really
you.
went a couple different
Yeah,
directions.
even though the lyric is pacing the dark, I feel like it wasn't pacing. If to me, it felt like it was really going somewhere.
Well, I could hear some
Yeah.
of that jazz vocal stuff going on there
Mhm.
too, with almost like kind of
Oh.
scatting, and
Mhm.
it was really,
Mm.
really interesting how you kind of meld those things together to create something like this.
Thank you.
When you're putting that together, do you put any sort of creative constraints on your songwriting, or do you just say, I'm going to throw it all in there?
I suppose in the earlier days I didn't, and now I probably would more. I find that if I confine the songwriting to a topic, that it's kind of easier. Yeah.
Mm.
And like rather than sitting there all day waiting for the muse to
Yeah.
appear.
Mhm.
But no, vocally, I kind of like being open and trying different things out. My penchant would be for things to change.
Hmm.
Even in Lovely Annie, it's not the same structure the whole way through. And here, I like when things change. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, and
Mm.
I also can really hear that in the music, but I also think it's really interesting when you wrote this song. You said that you wrote most of these on the piano. Um, like, is this the kind of sound that you envisioned when you wrote the song? I know you kind of pick players who will kind of lift up your music in creative ways, but did you kind of picture it this way, or was this kind of a surprise as it evolved?
No, this was definitely a surprise, a nice one
Yeah.
as it went along, especially the strings. I thought that the strings might, as you say, they're often used for yeah, more sort of cinematic or
Mhm.
soaring parts. I thought it might weigh it down a bit, but it didn't. It really lifted it up.
Although
Hmm.
it's interesting you say cinematic because I felt like it was more cinematic because of again, it felt
Yeah.
like in the way that like, you know how cartoons are
Hmm.
often have these orchestrations, like the classic cartoons of the like as they're stepping, you hear "Do, do, 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 do," and I
Yeah.
feel like that it kind of had that, like it really
Yes.
did
Yeah.
help narrate the tune a bit, which
Yeah.
is
This
kind of
is
cool.
funny because it is a journey. It's like through Cork City,
Hmm.
and I'm looking for my mother, really, even though she's a ghost.
Mm.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That is, I mean, that was the feeling that I had after listening to that. That was the
Mm.
first
Spooky.
time I've
Yeah.
heard that song, but I felt
Yeah.
like we went on a trek.
Mm.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm.
And speaking of journeys, it looks like Chris says that he's hoping to be in Ireland at the end of June. Do you think you'll be performing around Galway or Dublin around that time?
No, I'm performing in Galway at the end. Oh, well, yes. No, no. That's at the end of April. And then I'm in Dublin in May. No, I think I might be back in the States actually. well, on the end of June. So
So,
sorry,
Chris,
Chris.
what? Well, maybe you'll catch her stateside. I should. This is a good time to mention that Karen has been very busy. Not only did she put out a brand new record this week on Wednesday, and she was just in the States recently for the Folk Alliance International Conference, but she'll be back in the U.S. In just a week,
Yeah.
and so she'll be playing. Is it like about 3 weeks worth of dates around the
Mhm.
East Coast and through the Midwest? Sadly, not making it all the way to Minnesota on this trip, but making it as far as Michigan on this trip. And but you can check out all the tour dates at KarenCasey.com, both the Irish ones as well as the US ones. And I know, yeah, you'll be coming to the US, I think, a couple times maybe this year. So
Yeah, I'm coming in June and November as well. Yeah.
excellent.
Yes.
Wonderful. So folks can check that out. And they can check out this new record, Nine Apples of Gold, which is so stunning. And again, again, similarly, a lot of originals on this record and very feminist album, this new album.
Hmm.
It's so interesting because when I saw you at Folk Alliance International a couple weeks ago and you did a set mostly of the new songs, but you put in that song Lovely Annie that we heard earlier
Yeah.
today, and
Mm.
it seemed to fit in so well. It seems like this album, all songs inspired by your mother, who was obviously a very strong force in your life. And this new album, also celebrating women's stories, they kind of feel like they dovetail a little bit with each other.
Yeah, it's true. And I didn't really plan it that way at all. But I suppose when you're sitting there allowing the emotions to come through, that seems to be where I am. Like, and a lot of songs, even, for my daughters and having conversations with them. So there seems to be something about that creative impulse where it's a very small sacred place that you kind of want to protect. And so I try and be very tender with it and very gentle with it. And that seems to, these songs seems to appear out of that.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, beautiful storytelling and music. And if folks want to check out both this album we're talking about today, 2 More Hours, as well as the new album Nine Apples of Gold, they can go to KarenCasey.com and check out all the music's there because it's all fantastic.
Thank you.
And
This is
I
a great idea.
thank
Oh,
you.
Yeah. I don't mean just because you have me. I'm just like, it's just such a nice thing to be doing.
well,
Well, we
thank you.
realized, unfortunately, I thought we had more time, but it looks like
Yeah.
we have time for just one more song here,
So,
which is too
Ah,
okay.
bad. So, folks are definitely going to want to get the whole record because we're only going to get to 4 songs today from this beautiful record. So, but the next song I think you wanted to play was The Heron. Is there anything
Please.
you want to say about this before we take a listen?
Well, in this, I have, it's a very old Irish thing. I don't know if we do it in America, but here we have a lot of people who have passed away as living on their spirits, often as birds. So, you'd wave to the robin, or you'd tell the magpie to go away if it was on its own, or hope that there was another magpie behind the hedge or whatever. But so, we've a strong connection, spiritual connection with birds. So I have imagined my mother as a heron. I'm not so sure she'd be impressed.
She
But
wasn't a fan of herons.
I don't know if she'd have known even what a heron, was. We didn't really. I don't know if we had herons near Waterford. Well, anyway, um, so I have imagined her as a heron coming down and saying to me, I go to the park, the Glen Park here in Cork, and kind of minding me and helping me get through life and grief, and also letting go of grief and moving through the process and saying, okay, come on now, it's time now to move on. So I thought that was a good way to end the album.
Excellent, and a great way to end our hour here with Karen Casey. This is the Heron here on the Back Catalog Listening Party.
Thank you.
The heron flies in, long and low. She is like the F in Sassy's blues. She lands down perfectly on the other side. She's perched now on her tall, slim legs on the other side. I try to catch her eye, but she's not having any of it. She likes to be in charge. She flies in, low and alone. She lands down on the other side. She stands tall, aloof and grey. She's loaded down with her secrets. She sees all, but she doesn't say. Gathers up the stories and flies away. Try to keep her here. Oh, I use all my charm. She smiles and says it'll be okay. You're gonna come through. Oh, you're gonna have your day. All your wildflowers will grow in the month of May. You're gonna come through. Oh, you're gonna have your day. All your wildflowers will grow in the month of May. You're gonna wake up one morning and you're gonna know what to say, and you're gonna know what is best to do. Sun's gonna shine down on you, and life may be rocky and wild, but you're gonna know what is best to do. Oh, my day is arrived. Oh, look, it's in my hand, so I take it, and I know what is best to do. The heron flies in, long and low. She is like the F in Sassy's blues. She lands down perfectly on the other side.
Ah, wow.
Beautiful.
Beautiful way to end the show today. That was Karan Casey with The Heron, inspired by her mother, and recorded for her album Two More Hours, which we've been revisiting today with Karen joining us from Ireland. It's been such a treat, and I'm so grateful, Karen, that you were able to stay up late with us
Yes, thank you
and
so much.
revisit these songs because that was
Oh,
so beautiful.
no, no,
And
it's fantastic. Thank you. It's a really, really great idea. Thank you. Thank you.
I just have to say, I love that line about it's like the F in Sassy's
Sassy's
Blues.
Yeah.
Blues. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so great. I think that's a great
Yeah.
tie-in for any of you who missed it at the top of the show. Karen mentioned that she got her start thinking she was going to be a jazz singer, and I like the way that you still slide those things in there when you can. So lovely. And Anne says she just picked up a copy of this CD. So
Excellent.
you can
Great.
follow Anne's lead. Go to KarenCasey.com, pick up this CD. Also pick up her new album, Nine Apples of Gold, or anything from her catalog is going to be fantastic. So you can check that out. Those are the tour dates coming to the US in just a week. So we can't
Mm.
wait to have you stateside, and someday we'll get you out here, back here to Minnesota, because it's been too long. So
Thank
um,
you both so much. You're
Oh, thank.
great. Thank
This
you.
was
this
wonderful.
was
This was
lovely, and I would agree with Joni. Could listen to another hour easily,
yes.
and I
Likewise.
agree, and I feel like luckily you have a big back catalog, so we'll have to have you back another time to revisit
Yes,
another
I'd
record.
love it. Yes, thank you. Thank you
And
so much.
and we want to thank all of you for joining us today. If you liked the show, as you obviously did, make sure to
Yes.
like it on YouTube. Send more bots to Karen Casey. You can also subscribe to the our YouTube channel, because we do this every week, and you'll get notifications of and reminders of what's coming up next. And I think next week we might have a Twin Cities artist joining us, Steve Call, who's in addition to being a great musician, has probably recorded many of the albums we've talked about
Yeah,
here on the
he's
show.
probably
He's a great
produced like
studio
90%
engineer.
of the Minneapolis St. Paul records here.
So we're
It's gonna
excited
be
about
good.
that. That'll be next week. But if you want to know more about what's coming up on the show, obviously you can also like our Facebook and Instagram pages, but you can also join our Patreon. This is the community of people that support our show financially and spiritually and keep this show going,
Yeah.
and also suggest artists to be on the show. They also are the first to find out who is going to be guests on the shows, and they get invited to special after parties and Zoom events. And you can be a part of this community and support the show, which has kept this on the air for the last
Yeah.
almost 3 years. Penny and
yeah, I was just gonna say this is like our equivalent of the pub.
yeah,
It-
exactly,
this is-
pretty
this
much.
is this is
So
it.
we don't have to leave the house. So.
No, we all gather here every Friday, and we'd love to have you there too.
Oh,
Exactly. There's no competitions, though. Penny, Anna, Linda, Bevan, Connie, Vaughn, Alan, Chris, Alex, Becky, Galen, Peggy, Joe, Jim, Beverly, and John, Fred, Tim, Sarah, David, Jocelyn, Court, Matt, Steve, Mark, Homestead, Pickenborough, Severin, Lynn, Jake, Mary, Many Tracks, Nikki, Joni, David, and maybe you if you want to join as well. But mainly, thank you for joining us and being a part of the party, because this is what it's all about, is listening to music with our friends and talking about it, hanging out, and forgetting about whatever's going on out there, which
I
I don't.
forgot. I forgot. I don't
I
even
don't-
know.
I don't.
know.
Let's just not even. Well, I'm just going to keep listening to Karen's album, and that will be my weekend. So, thank you all for joining us today.
Yes.
Hopefully, have a great weekend wherever you are tuned in from, and we'll see you back next week for another edition of the Back Catalog Listening Party. Safe travels, Karen, as you make it to the
Yes.
U.S.
Yes.
Thank you.
Best of luck with the new record, and we'll
Thank-
see everybody else here next week on the Back Catalog Listening Party. Cheers.
Sláinte.